messed with me so hard. And it was, God, I forgive my real mom and dad for abandoning me and leaving me to die. And she startled her. She pushes me off of her like, what are you saying? I forgive my real mom and dad for abandoning me and leaving me to die. And she just goes, would you forgive me? I gave up my firstborn son because I was on drugs and alcohol. And this is the one and only person who could even begin to measure at all what was going on with this identity of this. And so here we're both at a place where we're both being healed at the same time. But I'm like, this doesn't happen. I mean, what are the odds of this ever happening? Like, the one person I needed to be able to articulate this to was stood in front of me that day. And that moment changed my life dramatically. I would say that would be actually the beginning of actually my healing, my eternal healing. I had a lot of physical things happening, and I had a lot of mental, but my heart and my spirit was just so hurt from just being deteriorated and just being so broken that I felt like I was a nobody, and that everything in my core being was that I could never achieve anything. Even though I had achieved many things in my life because I wanted to prove it wrong, inside I could feel that void, that lie that said I was nothing, and showing that it required that you had to use physical or just the most vulgarity of life to suppress that into some human being so that you could push them into the ground to the forcing of submission. And realizing all of a sudden this is coming into my brain where it's like, this isn't true anymore. This is a lie. But at the same time, how do I change something that is so knitted into my fabric of my being? I've now trained myself for the last 18 years of my life to respond, to be safe, to be guarded, that all my walls, everything that I do to self-preserve myself, now I have to start taking parts of those bricks out and replacing them with actual what are our truths, what are really reality points of life. And I get so stuck. And so as I'm dealing with this, I'm sitting in my chair. And so, as I told you, I'd been planning this long, vindictive pile-on of life that I was going to do, and had gone elaborate. I had saved up. I was a shark. I was very good with my finances. I was very keen on how to keep it going. And my company paid for everything, so I had no rent, no insurance, and nothing. I didn't have to pay for anything. My clothes, I didn't really need much for clothes because I lived in chef's clothes all the time because I just worked. So all my expenditures were still low because I was saving everything. So here I am, and I'm thinking, I'm going to be giving to this person. Because in my mind, I'm like, you set me free of something I never thought I'd be free of. Or even knew that even existed inside me. So I throw my wallet into the bucket. And again, I would not do that because I was saving everything for this elaborate plan I had. Never see my wallet again. Had to go get all my stuff new. And I asked him later, and even I asked my pastor, whatever happened to that? Like, I know you guys give the wallets back. He's like, yeah, when that happens, normally we give them back. I don't remember that. And I'm like, and it's because I had to start over. I had to start completely over. So I was preparing myself for this, whatever it was. And to my amazement, when I went in this meeting, it was not like what I wanted. All they asked is, I don't know, because I thought it was really odd. All they asked is there a memory that's bothering you and that you would like to see the truth in it? And I sat there and thought about it, and I was like, well, yeah. I want to know why I was raped and beaten so many times in my life. And I sat there, thinking, and all of a sudden, as soon as I said that, I was like, I don't know if I want the answer to that. And so, the very first thing they asked is, do you think that God was absent in that situation when this was happening to you? And I'm like, I don't know. I said, well, let's just ask. So they just said, just ask God to reveal that. Go back to that memory and look at it again. And look at it and see if you can see God in that place. And I did. And I'm a 5-year-old little boy killing another human being. And he's weeping. But at the same time, he's right there the whole time. And saying, this isn't your fault. I never asked, what you're doing is not your fault. And I'm thinking, how could it not be my fault? I killed another life. I killed a human being. And I was so little. He's like, but this isn't your fault. You didn't wake up and say, this is what I wanted to do. The perfect reality would have been you had good mom and dad, and you were raised in a loving home and a loving environment. This isn't your fault. So, as soon as I'm like, this is happening, then, it's like I jump-started right into the next one, where it was like I'm in the barn, and the cattle problem's out, and the beatings are occurring, and all of this stuff is happening to me. And again, I thought of, well, where are you? Because all of a sudden I'm just freaking out. I'm scared because it seems so surreal. Like I was actually looking at that place again in my life, and I'm physically there, and all of a sudden I'm like, this reality, it's like, I know this isn't happening again, but where are you? And so he was like, I was there the whole time. I mourned over that because I never wanted you to go through that. And then he goes, I want to show you something different. And he flash forwards me, and I don't know how old I was. And he said, you see all these people, and people were coming up by the droves. They were just coming. And he said, see all these people? These are people you will touch because people can't tell you. You don't know what it's like to be beaten. You don't know what it's like to be broken. You don't know what it's like to be abandoned or to be deserted. Or you don't know what it's like to be raped. You don't know what it's like to be told you're nobody. So all of a sudden I'm looking at that and I'm thinking, I'm glad. And I come out of that and I left that meeting. I went home, I laid in bed, and I thought, I'm so glad it happened to me. Even though it's so heinous, I could just think how many more people that this happens to. And there's no hope.
You can't help people do something you don't know.
Mm-hmm.
You can't teach them where you haven't been.
Mm-hmm.
And that's why. Because when you've been there and you know, then you can speak from your heart, your mind and your soul. Yeah. And that is why.
Mm-hmm.
And when we know that, then we are empowered. And there really is a purpose. And you aren't feeling it.
Yeah. Yeah. No, it's and it's so true. I can't think about how many lives have been impacted now. I can go back and see that. So, in this life-changing moment of my life, I'm going home and I'm thinking, I have to go make amends. And I realize I'm listening to this woman who's at our church who talked about forgiveness. I'm thinking, could I go do this? So I did. I go to my adopted parents and I go and tell them, will you forgive me for never allowing you to even be my parents? I'd shut off. So even if it would have been a perfect situation, I would never allow them to be my mom and dad. And nor would I have ever let them father my brother or my sister. And so I'm asking forgiveness, and I'm asking forgiveness of my brothers and sisters. And they're like, I don't understand why you're doing this. They don't know. And I said, I don't know, but if I don't do this, I feel like I would lose everything I've worked so hard to get right now. So I come home, and everything around me just starts changing. Everything just radically starts shifting. My viewpoints, my anger I could just feel it just slowly just eating away, where it's no longer just consuming my life. It's dissipating. My anger, really, that rage of anger was not like it was calm, because I have an anger, but it's not in the same place. It's not toward violence or towards myself. And so really, as my life just started to be radically shifted and everything around me started changing, I wanted to help others, I wanted to serve. But again, there's a lot of things that we can do and you can do to help other people, but there's certain things that you're like, when you do them, you're like, that resonates in my being. That is what I like. And so I got involved in the prison ministry, where we'd go to prisons, and so we were the champion players, and we'd go into these prisons, and every single time, somehow, and I normally would never, it was not scripted sometimes, just the skits were. But all of a sudden, someone would just say, I want to know what happened to you. Like a prisoner would ask that question and look right at me and say, what happened to you? And I'd be like, why would you ask me that question? Why don't you ask these other people who have a better Christian life than me, And I would tell them my story, and they would just be weeping and just be like, I want the Jesus that you know. I want the God that you know, not the one that was handed to me. And I'd be like, this is crazy. This is not normal. This shouldn't be happening. And so I'm thinking, okay, my life has changed. Things are happening. Am I resolving the things I'm doing? Have I done what is right? Like, have I, I really believe that there's a lot of things that happen in our lives that we ask for forgiveness for, but we can ask for forgiveness and that's step one. But there's this another place that says there's restitution and reconciliation that also needs to occur in life. That it isn't just because I said I forgive you that it's over. Yeah, I'll forgive you every single time you do it to me. But there's another place that says, would you be willing to take the time and invest the time to pay back what has occurred? And I thought, I don't know if I want to, because one, I don't want to be around my family. I don't like them. Don't want to be around them. I mean, we're such a secretive family, and just like, man, this is so weird. And I'm sitting here and I'm like, I don't do this well. This is not for me. This is not something that's bringing any peace in my life. As a matter of fact, I get more wound up being in this space than I do anywhere else. And so all of a sudden, as I'm driving home, I began to sit and think about it. I wasn't doing it for me. I was doing it for them. And they didn't know it yet. And so one day, my dad called me, and I got married, and we're in our first year. And my dad has never given me any kind of talk in his whole life to me that would be of any spiritual significance in my life. And he's like, well, I want to tell you something. He said, when you came and told me and you asked for forgiveness, I actually thought you were coming back to forgive me. He says, but every day that haunts me. He says, it haunts me that you were so willing to forgive us for that, and we don't deserve it. And he'd been having his own encounter with God at this time in his life. I mean, just because it's messing with him, it's eating at him, the man that he is, and he's becoming, what's his legacy going to be, And so he's like, and at the time, I was really wanting to get into full-time ministry and really investing into that. And he's like, I want to help you get a place. And I'm like, okay. Because part of it, I'm just kind of like, I'm already gearing up, I'm guarding myself, and thinking, this isn't a good scenario happening. Like, danger, danger, Will Robinson, and he's like, no, I'd like to help you get into a place. So I'm thinking, okay. So we meet in Salem, and he's sitting and he's like, I know, he talks about the 3 strands that can't be broken. And he starts telling me this, and I'm like, why would you tell me this? Like, of all the people, why would you tell me this? He's like, well, I know that the third has always been the Holy Spirit. He said, but would you consider that this also would be our family? That we could rebuild this string and reweave it and put it together so that we can't be broken? And I thought about that for so long. I thought, he would never say this. This is the man who would never say this. This is a guy who doesn't talk. He's completely a Vulcan in some sense. No emotion, nothing. It's just this very militant, logical thinking person and no emotion. And he's telling me this, and I'm thinking, what in the world is happening? And he just breaks down and he's like, will you forgive me? He's like, and could we begin? Would you allow me to be able to start investing into your life? And I was like, okay. And I said, yes, I'm willing to do that. So this home that we're in now, I'm 34 years old and I have no mortgage. This is a free gift. And what came with it was that my dad, when we said we wanted to rent this place, he's like, no, we'll buy it. And so he went and bought it. And he says, I can't pay you back for whatever I've done to you. He said, but I do want to give you an inheritance. And I want this to be a starting of your inheritance, would be that you would not have to strive with what most young people your age have to strive to for a home. He says, that way no one can ever take it from you. You'll always have it. And here you go. And I am like, you remember I said, I was like, we got to pay reconciliation and restitution for the things that we do. And I thought, he's actually doing it. I have not talked about it to anybody. I've not been very vocal about this because this is such a taboo subject to say, because you forgive somebody, that the right thing to do would be then to go make right. And here he did. And I was like, oh my gosh, this is happening. This is really going on in my life. And the second that starts going on, I'm looking at myself and I'm thinking, why won't you forgive? yourself. He's willing to forgive you. Why won't you forgive yourself? Because I still dealt with, can't look in the mirror, I can't, I'm completely paranoid of bathrooms, I'm paranoid, just constant paranoia of just random things, being afraid of the dark, and all these weird things. And they're not weird, they were just, here I'm an adult male, and most of these things to an adult male would not be something you should be afraid of. And where the things that I should have been afraid of, completely no fear of. But they were because of these things inside. And so as I'm looking at myself and I'm beginning to ponder, and I go and sit before a mirror and I force myself to, like open my eyes and look at it. It's not that I didn't look at it, but I never stared into one. I never would look at myself in the mirror. I could look at my body when I was shaving or I was needing to do something, but not just stare at it. And I just sat there and I began to really ponder, am I forgivable? Can I forgive myself? And I sat there just crying over it, and I called my mom and I said, I need help. I can't do this on my own anymore. And she's like, what? And she's like, I need help to finding out. I need to forgive myself, but I don't even know where to start. And she's like, what do you mean you don't know where to start? She's like, I don't know where to start. There's so much, and my brain won't stop, and I don't know where the beginning is. And she goes, you're at the beginning. And I'm like, what? She goes, you're at the beginning already. The rest will complete itself. And I'm thinking, okay, so I go back, I hang up the phone, I'm standing in front of the mirror again. And finally, I'm just like, and I uttered the words out loud to myself, I forgive myself. This is not your fault. That peace that came in that, you couldn't buy it in the store. You can't buy that anywhere. Because I can look at myself in the mirror, I'm comfortable with who I am, I'm not afraid of people, I don't care what people think of me anymore. I can hold myself up, I'm not afraid of crying, I'm not afraid of expressing myself, and I'm not afraid to stand up for others. And it all came from being able to go face my own self and look and say, I'm forgivable, and I need my own forgiveness because, to be honest, I was my own worst enemy. And how I viewed myself. Other people thought great of me. My bosses, all of my bosses in the history of my life, always thought the greatest of me. But I couldn't even see it. But after that, I could see that, oh, I really did do that, what 18-year-old can run 36 restaurants? This is not a normal achievement. But yet I did it, but at the time, I still thought I was failing, and just utter failure. And I could look back then and go, oh my goodness, look at all this I had accomplished. And realizing I always had such a grace upon my life that things were easy for me. And, and even like my wife, she's, one in a million. And the irony of it all is we both are Hispanics, but we both said in the very first line opening statement to each other, we would never marry a Hispanic person. Right? And here I'm married to this amazing woman, and she's had to help walk out a lot of things in my life. I felt the hardest thing in our marriage was actually that one day when I finally told her, I finally love you. Because I was finally able to forgive myself. I was actually able to unpack my bag of that self-defense guard that said I was always ready for my wife to abandon me because it was someone I loved, because I believed that anyone who loved me would go and abandon me. So I was ready for her to do this. So in doing that, I had safeguarded myself from being prepared. I was emotionally prepared for that to happen. So, but not being so tactful about it, I just said, oh man, I just got an extreme amount of freedom. I just want to tell you, I finally really love you today. Which is like the wrong thing to say out loud. I did not mean it, like that. But, and that created a risk because she didn't understand that. And so it took a couple of years for her to understand, because I told her I went through a really rough childhood. I went through some really horrible things. Never really got into details about it too much with her. So then I finally sat and told her, this is what happened in my life, and I want to share this with you. I've never shared it with you, because I thought that you would just abandon me. And she's just been the most amazing person in my life, with that steadfastness of her love in my life. And now I have 2 amazing kids, and because I was able to see God from a total different avenue, from a total different viewpoint than what I had seen. All of my life I thought he was so far away, and he was unattainable, and we were just ants underneath his microscope. But the moment that I was able to see that, I could see that God was always near us, always around us, always there to help carry the load and be the strength that we can't have in our own. But at the same time, He was there to also help us pour it out. You know, that we really are vessels of the capacity to love other human beings to the highest level of honor and integrity, and not to look at people not as just a cookie cutter, but each person individually with such high potential and such high regard that we can't look at another human being and think, you're not worth investing into. That I don't want you to be me. I want you to be you to the highest level of your ability. How can I help you do that? And I spend most of my time, that's what really I spend most of my time doing when I counsel people or I spend time with people, is I want to see their greatness become what their potential was always going to be. Because I don't want them to be me. Because one, I don't want them to have to go through what I went through to do this. You know, like, I would never subject another human being to this.
Right.
But at the same time, though, those who are going through hard adversities, though, is for them, you know, to help them to say, hey, just because this happened, you see the potential that you have to helping somebody else out. Because you want out of your situation, if you can begin to say that you'd be willing to help another human being, will help you start your own process of walking it out. And that's what's happened in my life. And you know, it actually is really crazy sometimes. I mean, I laugh. Like, a prime example is this weekend. I took my son, this last weekend when it snowed, we went to Roseburg, and there was a guy digging through the trash can. And I know that I couldn't talk to him. Most adults, they have such judgment that they don't really ever look at the person. And because of that, most homeless people don't look at you. They won't want to talk to you because they feel that. And so I said, I told my son, here's $20. I asked that guy $20 for the bag of candy that he has. And my son, he's been asking for his gift. He's a giver. And he's like, I want to learn to give more. I want to practice that more. So I said, here's an opportunity for you to practice what you love to do. Let's do it. So he goes and does it. And he said, when that guy gives you that bag of candy back, you give back the bag of candy to him and then tell him that God actually loves him. So my son does. And the guy stands in the garbage can for 5 or 6 minutes and he just starts to cry. And he comes over to us. He says, I normally don't even like people at all. He said, but your son did that. He says, I couldn't reject that. That was pure. And the next thing you know, he's telling me his life story. Next thing you know, we're asking him for forgiveness. The next thing we're doing is he's now reacquainting himself to God. And these are the things that happen on a regular basis around me. I've had surgeons, I've been working with surgeons, or sit on a bench watching me work, and the next thing you know, they're telling me their life story about what's happening in their life. They're on their third wife. They can't figure out why they can't have a successful marriage. And, the next thing you know, are you willing to forgive your dad for putting on an expectation in your life that you could never meet, and yet you believe that to be true, and would you be willing to let it go today? Yeah, and then the next thing you know, I get a phone call. It changed my marriage, and things like that happen all the time. And if it wasn't for what happened to me as a child, I could not be doing this. And so as much as I never want anybody to ever go through this, and I don't believe any human being should ever go through that, I really do believe that our adversities and the trials in our life allow us to be able to help others so that we can help, basically make strong the weak and vanquish evil, like that concept. And I think about that so true. We have that ability to do that as long as we were to love others, not for what we want them to be, but who they're meant to be.
Our greatest strengths come from facing our greatest challenges.
Yeah.
A challenge is not a threat. It is a challenge.
Yeah.
And when you face them, you help other people face theirs. And that's the beauty of it. And it is beautiful because you're paying it forward. Really paying it forward.
Yeah. And I love that. I mean, that movie is an amazing movie as it is. But the gal who that concept is actually from is Rachel Scott. I don't know if you know who Rachel Scott is from Columbine. But, again, there's someone who's seen it from a totally different perspective. Consider pure joy, my brother, when we go through trials and tribulations. It seems like such an impossible thing that we would find any happiness in those. But I look at it now and I'm like, my greatest joy and happiness has been because of that, to see the joy that's been bestowed on other people's lives because of it, and to be able to say, hey, I can help you out if you want out. And there's some things where it's just like, look, I know that I can't change it, I can't make a difference, but I'll be here for you. And I won't change that. I will always be here. I'm just steadfast to say, you know what, I'll always be here. So you ever want to call me? Call me. I'm right here. I won't change. I haven't changed how I view you. I haven't changed how I love you. It won't change. And, it'll be a year down the road, and hey, I want to change.
But that's power.
Mm-hmm.
Because so many people that are so emotionally wounded are feeling so alone,
mm-hmm.
like they're totally isolated from absolutely any human being that cares.
Mm-hmm.
And just saying, I'll be here for you, could be the gift of a lifetime.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. And ironically, I thought that would be more for women. I actually found it more to be true in men. I found that statement was more true for men than it was women. Because I have watched a lot of young men who've just, a lot of times we think that a lot of this only happens to women, really these hard adversities, and they're in the higher demographic of it for sure, but, there's a lot of men who go through this stuff that is like really interesting because we're goal-oriented or mission-driven people that our lives get so absorbed into certain things that we can't even see it. And to see a full-grown man cry who never cried, out loud, like, I never cried. And now realizing what a strength it is to be able to express emotion and be able to enjoy it and not be shut down and not be so reserved and realize what a freedom that is. And to a lot of males, that is a hard thing. It really is. I think one of the key factors of really being a man, what a really man should be, and that is someone who can care and be compassionate and want to restore and want to rekindle life. There are so many males out there that I know that have gone through, either being raped or beaten or abused, and we see the side effects in a society that we only become numbers and we only become a system versus you're an individual and you're worth investing into, and even to the women. And I just so wish that our society in general would really see that and not try to make categories and not try to do that, and saying, what you went through is just as valid as what someone else went through, and at the same time, can we come to a place to say, how can we help one another be strong again? Instead of, I don't want to associate with that person because they went through that, or they're struggling with this addiction, or they're struggling with their whatever they're having to overcome. Because really, the more we can actually bind healthy family dynamics, there's some family members I can't be around. It's just the reality. But at the same time, knowing that they have a purpose and they have a place in life, and not to discredit that. And that's really, I feel like that should be the greatest value we should be teaching humanity at this place.